So I'm Justin. It's great to be here, and I'm honored to stand up in front of a room full of peers and talk to you about something I'm very passionate about. You're here, and I'm here to look at innovation and technology and how it's really changing all of our businesses. And for Cargill, this is a very personal thing because it's rooted in the purpose of Cargill, which is to nourish the world in a safe, responsible, sustainable way. And this is a challenge, and as you saw from Tim's presentation, this is a challenge that's not getting easier, it's actually getting harder and harder, and we'll talk a little bit about that. At Cargill, we're investing in technology and innovation in all its forms. These investments are really allowing us to pursue disruption. No one really likes disruption. We think it's important. We think it's important that we step out as a company that does what we do and starts to disrupt in our own markets and do it not just for Cargill, but really for the market, the customer, and the world in general. That's what we're after. We're after creating healthier diets for all the inhabitants of the planet and creating them in a way that keep us within planetary boundaries in their production. About disruption, it would be an understatement to say that all of you are not living or living without disruption. It's happening around us every day. And instead of pulling our hair out on it, we're trying to say, hey, this is a good thing, right? How can we take this disruption into our own organization? Seems counterintuitive, but for food and ag, it's essential. It gives us a chance to collaborate and work with people we would have never worked with in the past. If you think competitors, think government agencies. We think and agree that for food and ag, disruption is going to be more the norm than not the norm in the future. Today, we know, if you're Cargill, you know there's enough food to feed everybody on the planet, yet still we're unable to do away with starvation on the planet. We also know that in that 2050, when that rocket ship is going to take you to Shanghai in 35 minutes from New York, there's going to be about 10 billion of us on the planet. And so that's what I mean when I say it's not going to get any easier to do some of the things we do, it's going to get harder. We have to find a way to feed a growing population without putting additional burdens on the planet. So like never before, and that's what's a cool thing about this conference, like never before, we can come together and really talk about technology and talk about innovation. But we would say, I would say, and suggest to fellow CIOs or whatever, everyone else in the room, CTOs, digital officers, think about the purpose. So it's not technology for technology's sake, it's really what is the purpose of that technology and what is it going to achieve. I think we have to take more of that into how we think about what we're going to do, what we're going to invest in, and why we're going to do that. In Cargill, we are leaning heavily into open source technology. So this is a decision we made not too long ago, and we believe that open source in the innovation of digital technologies in your markets is important, really maybe more so now and in the future than any other time in the past. And that would be why. Well, it would be because we should share that which we are inventing and share that which we are innovating on to allow for a more inclusive and more participative technology community to help solve some of those problems. So that's why we take an open first approach. So there I talked to you a little bit and preached to you a little bit. Now I'm going to talk to you about your food. So I asked that I get the menu, so I got to get a peek at the menu tonight before you ate it. Now I'm not going to scare you about the food, but I'm going to maybe tell you a little bit about some cool things, or at least I think they're cool, we think they're cool at Cargill, that are kind of like what Tim was talking about and what we're sitting around this conference talking about. So not just the finished dish either, right? So I want you to think about all the ingredients that are involved in that. So we'll start by talking about protein. So when we talk about protein, you're going to get a protein tonight. I think it's going to be beef. But I'm going to talk to you about a protein that's, I think we all eat, which is poultry or chicken. And so we've never been able to really decipher or understand the clucks of a chicken. Well, it's important now, right? Why is it important? So it's important that we're listening to chickens and using AI and big data to decipher those chickens, because chickens get sick. All of you and chickens will sound different before you actually manifest your cold, or before you start to sound like you have a cold. Same thing's true in chickens. And if you can capture that with an acoustical device in a chicken farm, and you can put that in a database and do data science on that, you can predict and find the exact chick that's sick before that chick is able to get all the other chicks sick. Why is this important? Why does this matter? Why is this important? Because we all want to eat chicken without antibiotics, and we all want to take antibiotics out of our food system. It's also important because in 2015, in 21 states, the influenza flu ripped through the poultry and chicken and turkey farms, and we lost over 42 million birds in one raising season. So what does that do? That raises prices. That makes an important form of poultry more expensive than it would be otherwise. And it also costs farmers a lot of money. So we're trying to solve that. What we would call that is one aggregation of marginal gain in the food supply. And it's real AI, and we have real data scientists coming to Cargill, not Amazon or Google, to work on ads, but to try and decipher what chickens are saying when they're clucking. Let's talk about another form of protein. About 3 billion people get 20% of their daily protein from fish. And a lot of those people are some of the poorest people on earth. Right now, we know that about 90% of our oceans are overfished or getting close to it. We're stressing the ability to have the ocean provide us all the fish protein that the planet's going to need. And at 2050, when we have about 10 billion people, that's going to be a lot more people eating protein. Between now and 2050, we're pretty sure that we're going to have to produce 70% more protein in order to feed that planet. So shrimp is just one aspect of protein that's eaten. About 50% of all the shrimp in the world, if you have a shrimp cocktail tomorrow, are produced on farms. I get in trouble for saying this, but shrimp too make a sound when they eat. Now, we're not listening to them yet, but what we are doing is putting IoT devices in those shrimp farms. You saw it on the video, and we're creating a digital platform that's in the cloud, and we're helping the farmer assess the health of the water, the amount of feed to feed. And what's important about that is fish eat fish in order to be healthy fish. So if you're a shrimp farmer or you're a salmon farmer, Cargill feeds about 1 out of every 3 salmon consumed on the planet. And shrimp, we feed an awful lot of shrimp that are consumed as well. If you're that salmon farmer or that shrimp farmer, every morsel of feed matters because that's part of your cost. And every morsel of feed that doesn't get eaten goes to the bottom of the ocean or the bottom of the pond, and that's less sustainability. So by using digital innovation, IoT, and data science, we can do some really important things. And it's happening today. IQ Shrimp and our aquatic platform is part of that. Now let's talk a little bit about beef. So I just brought one example. I'll have a few more, but one example in the beef supply chain. Cargill, if you had a hamburger, anybody have a hamburger in the last couple of days or over the weekend? There you go. So Cargill is the leading company in the world that produces ground beef, about 4 billion pounds a year. So it's a pretty good chance that that hamburger you had might have come through a Cargill facility. In order to process that beef, you have herding of the bovine, and it's although in movies looks kind of cool and interesting on horseback and people herding cattle, it's actually quite dangerous. So in one of our facilities in Nebraska, Schuyler, Nebraska, we've replaced our human herders, and you see that in the picture, with robotic herders. This did not eliminate jobs, because the people who know how to herd the cattle in a very humane way operate the devices offline and on a catwalk in order to stay in a safe location. One other interesting piece of note on how we're applying now robotics into the supply chain. And about 5,000 cattle go through that one facility a day. We have many other facilities around the country and the world. So now I'm going to get a little techie on you and talk about Hyperledger. I don't know if any of you have heard about Hyperledger, but Hyperledger is an open source community. It was started by the Linux Foundation, and Hyperledger Sawtooth blockchain is an open source blockchain, and at Cargill, 150-year-old ag company, we've become one of the major contributors to that supply chain. Now, the reason I share this with you is because although you'll eat tonight, and although you've heard a lot about blockchain, if you're in our field, you can't eat a blockchain, right? But it's going to be incredibly fundamental and critical to the supply chain of ag and food. So some of that traceability stuff you saw in that kitchen in Tim's video, that will be underpinned by the data architecture and structures of a distributed ledger. It's already happening. We've taken the position to lead the way, and what I would say is each of you in your industries and your markets, you're standing in front of the same opportunity. What I'm encouraging you is to cross over the line and get innovating and become the leader in your industry, and I would say get innovative in an open source way. Don't be afraid to give it away. Okay, software companies don't get excited when Justin stands up on stage and says, hey, give your software away. But I see this in terms of those with the subject matter expertise, which is you in the room on your industry, and Cargill in our industry, this as a very critical next step for all of us to take. We're going to all be the technology. We're going to all be the product in the future, regardless of what industry. Splinter, we just released 2 weeks ago, is the individual encryption on the blockchain so you can have private communications with an individual that's a participant in that blockchain. Why do I talk about this? Why would I mention this? And I mention this because we're pretty sure in the future that's going to help with things like data privacy and data compliance, how we do GDPR, and other things like that as we move forward in the future. So there's also on your plate of food tonight will arrive vegetables, you'll have a dessert, there'll be starches, sweeteners, sugars, maybe there'll be chocolate in that dessert, and many of those things come from the grains that are on the planet. We are working with a startup company that started out of Los Alamos National Labs to capture terabytes of data on visualization of the planet Earth. And we're doing that for a reason, because we're trying to predict crop outcome and crop supply like never before. So we can match and help match the supply to the demand and know exactly where to move it on the Earth. So why is that important? Well, that's important because in a business like ours and all the participants in the food industry, and it will likely stay this way versus go in a different direction, you're talking about a 5 or 6% gross margin business. I don't know how many people in the room are operating in that type of business, but that would be a commodity business. There's not a lot of margin for error. A glitch in the weather can change the production of the crop. The weather in the last year impeded the planting of about 7 million acres in North America alone. So now having that satellite imagery, doing that big data, and that data science on it, we can predict exactly where to move the crops in a much more efficient manner than we would otherwise, and that reduces CO2. That too is good. Project BEAT. I'll talk about Project BEAT, and this is a little bit about partnerships and disruption. So Project BEAT is a group of companies that does exactly what Cargill does, which would have traditionally been our competitors, and we've come together to work on a simple problem that would be good for the entire industry. So the world grows about 3.2 billion metric tons of grain a year. A little less than 1 billion, or about 1 billion of those metric tons get shipped on ocean freighters. Many of you may have read recently about global trade wars. So think ocean freighters and farm goods and grains moving across the planet. There's about 1 billion tons of that, billion metric tons of that move. The last innovation in the shipment of those grains around the world was email. So of those billion metric tons or more, the companies that got together, Cargill got together with to put this together, did an estimate, and we figured out it's about 275 million emails to settle that grain and manage those contracts and land that grain in the port or the country or the destination from its source. 275 million emails. So we got together to talk about this, and everyone in the room pretty much got to the point of, well, it would probably be good for all of us, and it would probably be good for the industry in general. Let's all put our competitive swords away and let's just sort this out, and that is what we're doing. And that's what I mean by be the one in your company who can approach the non-traditional partner to bring an innovation, in particular digital innovation. The World Resource Institute, another non-traditional partner for a company like ours. This is a non-government organization. And those types of organizations at times can be tough on companies like Cargill, and many of you may experience some of the same. We think that's a good thing, right? We need folks keeping all of us in check and pushing us to do more and do what we do better. We are partnering with the World Resource Institute, the Aqueduct Project. WRI concentrates on the water that is used and the land that is used to grow the food we grow. Not all of the food, we would say, in the world is grown on the best land that it could be grown on, right? It's better to grow food without irrigating. It's better to grow food without plowing the field. It saves on CO2. These are the types of things that we work with the WRI, and WRI also has access to enormous technology resources. So it would be another non-traditional partnership that you could forge in your company to get yourself to another place. Techstars. So when I started this job in this field years back and became a CIO, I would have never thought I would be leading a technology startup group. Busy putting in ERP systems and consolidating data centers and making networks work around the world and all those other normal things, cyber protecting. So now there's an opportunity, I think, for all of us. We have connected with Techstars. We signed a multi-year deal. We go through about 1,000 startups a year all over the world within chalking the field of farm to fork innovation, and we select down to 10 companies a year that are early stage, and we bring them to Minneapolis, and we work with them for 16 weeks. What's good about that? Well, one, we're 157,000 employees in a big 150-some-year-old corporation. There's nothing like having your senior executives who run some of your largest supply chains sit across the table from a founder where there's nothing between them and the street other than their idea and their ability to try and bring it to life. You want that to rub off on your business leaders, and this is helping us do that. And they have some incredible ideas. They are some incredible people with a lot of courage. Their ideas are many of them, their ideas will take off, many of them they won't. And we can shape and focus them into our markets to create that disruption and be right there helping them do that. That too is a very good thing in our business. So one last thought before I go. I'll just leave you with the food on your plate tonight. It's not going to light up. It's not going to connect to the internet. It's not going to be able to go from here to Shanghai in 39 minutes. But the massive supply chain, when you think about that food tonight, think about the massive supply chain that moved that food from where it came from all the way to your fork, right? McKinsey tells us that still the agriculture business is the least digitalized business of all businesses and all industries in the world. And it's one of the ones that may be, if not the most important, maybe the most important to the world. So there's a lot of work to do, right? So I would be like your last place CIO right now, standing up here in terms of food and ag, in terms of digitalization. And we're literally, I think all of us here, right? I include myself in that in particular, we're standing at the beginning of a new era. You know, we really are. It's not hyperbole. It is really happening. We're able to do things with data we would have never dreamed of. And we get to start asking our questions on some of these things just because we can, should we? And I would say, well, we should at least try and then figure out whether we should or not. So one last thought is, you know, as CIOs and technology leaders, we're carrying a new ball, right? It's not just enable that innovation, it is actually be the innovation and lead the innovation in your company, right? It's not just help change happen or be change yourself. It's like become the change inside your own organization as well. And I think this last one is one, if I thought back a number of years ago, I would have never really thought it, but you know, for many, many years, and even still for many of us, we're there to enable the strategy. And I would say, right, the dog has caught the bus in terms of technology and technology leadership. It's time for every one of us, which would include all of you in the room, is to be the strategy in your company versus just enable the strategy in your company. So thank you, and have a great meal.